Okay, come on up. Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I spoke with you one other time.
Yeah.
In Grand Lebac a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me to spend time with this, what I was inquiring deeper into. You said, like a friend, if you want to get to know it, spend time with it. And I was so new to this that I thought one of the best ways maybe I could spend time with it was to go stay with a master in an ashram.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so glad I had had just even that little time with you, because something very sticky was happening in the ashram.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt so pure with the few minutes I had with you. It navigated me out of that.
Oh, good. Also, what navigated you out was also your good sense, right?
I was spending time with this.
You had some intuition and you followed through on it. So that's really important in all this.
So when I talked to you last, I was telling you that I have a hard time with leaving my home.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think I told you I live my life from underneath my bed.
Yeah.
And so to go to different countries to spend time with this was like my offering.
I'll bet. Yeah.
And I just want to thank you so much for your teachings, because they grounded me, even though this is only the second time I've listened to you in the Dharma Cafe, and you're free one week.
Yeah.
Anyway, my question is, sorry, now that I know more deeply this beingness, this presence, because it's what navigated this whole journey.
Yeah.
And I know you say, look for how you leave it. Look for, I don't know if those are words, but
Yeah, those little moments where we just turn away from our own presence of being.
I wanted to ask you your opinion or if you could describe what spiritual bypassing is, because I don't want to do that.
Okay, so spiritual bypassing has a lot to do with your intention, right? When your intention is something like, oh, I don't want to have that experience, I'll just go somewhere else internally. I'll just look for an alternative experience. So if I can go to happiness or bliss or whatever, I'll go there, and I'll use that to not really deal with what I've experienced. Now, it's tricky because part of what insight shows you is exactly what is beyond whatever you may be caught up in emotionally, say, in that moment. So that's part of what we see. But if we start intentionally using it, like, oh, I won't experience this, and I'll try to go to this, then we're starting to bypass.
So is that like grasping presence? Because it doesn't feel quite.
No, it's not grasping presence. It would almost be like someone, say, criticizes you. And you feel, and you go, oh, okay, criticism. No. I really don't like feeling criticism, so I'll go to presence. Oh, I feel that feels much better. Now, that in itself is fine, but if you never go back and go, no, what's that criticism stuff? Because you can look at the criticism from presence.
Yeah.
Then you can actually see deeper into it, like, why was I triggered? What little thing am I still identified there? Then that moment becomes your own teaching, and you're not bypassing it. You're actually utilizing presence as sort of a stable ground from which you can experience anything.
So the somatic piece of it.
Yeah.
From different traumas and things.
Yeah.
That's where I feel the bypassing. But
Yes.
because now that I feel the presence somewhere, that's there usually most of the time, except in deep PTSD or whatever, where it's veiled, I'll start to feel the somatic feelings, and I'll not want to go into story.
Yeah.
And then I don't really know, because there's such an intensity to it, exactly how to do that dance without bypassing. And I don't.
I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
So you may or may not need, more real hands-on help with it. I never know, but you'll know. But the principle is what I would have you do if you had sort of what felt like an old traumatic response coming up, is go, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to approach this in a very small way from presence. So if you can have any experience of presence, then we go, okay, now can the presence allow just a little bit of that experience? 10%. Can you just allow 10% of it to be felt? Right? And you just hang out. And 10%. I think I can do that. Okay, be with that for a bit. Now, you'll know if you can't, right? If you start to feel overwhelmed, or you start to, the big cue is you start to close your eyes, which means you're going into an internal traumatic response. You open your eyes, so you stay connected. Like, okay, I need to stay connected. 10% was a little too much. Let's try 5. And there's a really strange thing that can happen. I've had a lot of people report back to me that have said, when I really defined, almost like to the universe or to yourself or wherever, when I really defined how much of it I wanted to be able to be present for, it's like somehow that 10% showed up, or 5%, or somehow so when you can articulate your needs really clearly, it's amazing the response you get, right? So sometimes if it starts to get overwhelming, and you go, okay, this is too much from now, right? Give me 10% of this. And you open your eyes and you really stay connected, and you breathe, all those things. You try to reestablish a kind of calm. Okay, let's try 5%. Because the theory behind it, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the experiences that get stuck in our system, stuck in our minds, but also stuck in our bodies, are experiences that never were allowed to complete themselves. Right? They're generally too overwhelming, and so we kind of sidestep them. We disconnect it in some way, right? And it's an amazing coping mechanism. It actually, you got to give it its credit. At the moment you're doing it, it actually works pretty well, right? So a lot of people go like, oh, trauma, I disconnected, how terrible. I kind of think of it as no, how wise. Good for you, you disconnected when it was too much. But you're not, you're not 10 years old now. And so the principle underlying it, when experience can be experienced completely, it self-liberates. That's why you don't get hung up on the best moments of your life. No one's ever said, I had this great, great day in 1965, and it left me so blissfully, unimaginably happy, and I just can't escape it, Adya. Why is that? I mean, and it's not just because it's really good. Another reason is because when you're having a wonderful experience, you're unconsciously completely willing to experience it. So it comes, it moves through, it passes, and you usually wish you could make it last longer. Traumatic or difficult experience comes, and everybody has their own limit for what's too much for them. And you start to disconnect, you start to go unconscious in different ways. That experience is there just to be re-experienced, but without going unconscious. And it's not all or nothing. That's what you need to know. It's not, I just throw the doors open and try to experience again all at once. You'll probably just re-traumatize yourself. But you can go, hey, how about 5% today? And when 5% starts feeling comfortable and manageable and your heart doesn't start beating out of your chest when you do it, you can go, let's go for 10. Just really, of course, I'm no expert in this stuff, right? I'm going on a very intuitive basis, but it seems to align with what a lot of people who do this work have told me, which is kind of fascinating, and just really nice and gentle, right? One of the most important things in any of this, certainly in any of spirituality, is you have to treat yourself like you actually care about yourself. It's amazing how often we don't do that. You know what I mean? You'll treat your glass better than you treat yourself that you drank out of. So I think the first thing is we all have to bring consciousness. Am I actually treating myself with some dignity and some care? Right? As I would treat somebody that I actually really cared about. Let's just start there. Right? Because until we can get to that place, not much is happening. And I think especially when it comes to having these bigger traumatic kind of feelings, like, I actually care about myself. I care about myself to move through this in a way that's just right for me. And a pace that's just right for me. And you'll be amazed when you approach yourself with that kind of dignity and care. There's something within us that kind of goes, oh, she's a safe space. You know what I mean? Because something deep inside you and me and everybody in this room, we know when somebody is a safe space. And we know when they're not. And we know when we're a safe space to open. And we know when we're not. So you got to become that safe space.
And that safe space is just that awareness that's just present with what's happening.
Yeah, but heartfully present, right? Heartfully. So it's not disengaging. It's like heartfully present, right? I mean, hell, it's all one. What am I running away from? Right? In one sense, in one overly simplified sense, all of our confusion is kind of just confused presence. Right? It's not essentially other, separate from anything. You just got to hang out with it enough where it kind of starts to transform itself.
Okay, so like for just the last example, tonight I wanted to come, but I didn't want to come, and I was told that to not come was maybe spiritually bypassing because I could listen to you in my nice, comfortable home.
Yeah.
But to come would be...
Good. I'm glad you came. I imagine something in you knew that for you it was important to come, and so you stepped beyond your fear, and that's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you do that, if you don't do too much all at once, your system starts to realize, oh, I can actually function and I can do well even when I'm kind of stretching myself and it's a little scary, right? If I headlong take a swan dive into the scariest thing I can imagine, might be too much all at once. But these little steps are great. Like I said, the fact that you're here is a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. I know I have to leave. And this one I learned, by the way, teaching my father, who's passed a rock climb. A guy that would not go to the top of a ladder when I was a kid. And the way I taught him was exactly what I'm telling you. He'd get his feet 3 feet off the ground, and he'd go in panic. And I just would ask him, can you stay there for 30 seconds? And if he said no, I'd let him down, because he got to be the leader. If he said yes, we'd stay for 30 seconds, and then we'd come down. And that was it. That's as much as he could do the whole day, which was great, because I'd have somebody to blame me all day long. And then the next week, it was 2 feet higher, and 2 feet higher. And this guy that was so terrified of heights, 3 years later, we did a climb in Yosemite, 450 feet. And I'll never forget him. We're on the edge of that rock, looking over at the falls. And he just looked at me and he just said, I would have never thought this could happen. And it's just these little steps. Little steps. If they're too big, you go, I'll never do that again. Okay. That's the principle. Nice to be with you all. Thank you so much. And to the host and the volunteers that made this possible, thank you so much for having me come here. I'd love to show up and see you guys each week, or each year.